Order. The Mayor. You seated? There. Welcome everybody. The first little sad part is we've had some passings during the past few weeks of Lord Plum, of Coleshill, Barry Lees, and one of the ex-councillors, Anne Lewis, and also one of our councillors has lost a brother. It's Councillor Denise Clues. If we could just have a moment's silence for those, please. Thank you. Does anybody would like to say any words about any of the deceased? Councillor Bell.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'm over Easter with Barry being so sadly passing away. Barry 2019, and whilst he didn't manage to complete a full term in office, he was a very active member, both in the chamber and outside. And during the 2019, he's become the chairman of the parish council. Busy, and while he was ill, all he could do was getting back to work. And he's going to be really sadly missed in Hartshill, and I think, yeah. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Marion Humphreys.
I would like to say something about Barry to Councillor Barry, actually. He was a true gentleman. From the time we met him, he was willing to help, he was willing to give anybody information, and he was just a true gentleman. He was friendly, and his family, I went to sit with him in the last weeks with Margaret and his family. His family are very open, very willing, very happy family, very supportive, and our thoughts are with his family at this time. Thank you.
Councillor Morse.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few words with Councillor Lewis. I've known Anne Lewis. She was on the council when I come on. And I took a lot of advice from her during that time to do it. And she was an absolute lady. There was no problems at all. She was beautiful, what she did. And I just was very sad when I heard that she passed away. I was sad when her husband did as well, but she'll be sorely missed in the end.
Thank you, Councillor Munson. Councillor Gosling.
Thank you. About Barry and just to say that I think Barry was just a real character, and he was so warm. And in meetings, when he was chairing meetings, climate change and things like that, he was obviously committed to his community. And as you've already mentioned, a real gentleman. And I would also like to reflect on the fact that with Anne Lewis, that she was one of our longest serving female councillors, and for her to have had that commitment her entire life to helping her community. She was an absolute inspiration to me when I first started on this council, and will be dearly missed.
Thank you. Councillor Owen.
Just Anne Lewis. Anne was an integral part of my childhood, and she was sorely missed by our family. If a summary of someone's life is a list of achievements, then Anne's list was extremely long. She dedicated over 40 years of her life to Glen Hurley and Piccadilly, and she achieved many things over that time. And she was sorely missed by myself and my family and the residents of Aberlour.
Thank you. Councillor James.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to reiterate everything that's been said about both councillors, but particularly I'd like to mention Anna Lewis, because she was not only a member of this council for many years, but also of Kingsbury Parish Council, and she'll be sadly missed there. She was as a new councillor, both on this council and on Kingsbury Parish Council, I found she was very helpful to me, even though we were different parties, and I had the greatest respect for Anna Lewis, and I think she will be sadly missed. And one of the things we'll miss actually at Kingsbury Parish Council is that there was a little tradition that we had, that it was always her who moved the accounts at the end of the meeting. We always heard her, and you know, those sort of things are gone now. So she was a wonderful person. And I'm really sad to hear that she's passed. Thank you,
Thank you. Councillor Simmons.
It's been said before, but I'd like to speak about Lord Plum. Lord Plum has been most generous to me as a Coleshill councillor. Really warm, really generous with his time and sharing his knowledge on so many things. Huge in the community, huge amongst the, and particularly supportive to me. Cultural show and horticultural show, and we became in his humour and his company, and he wasn't always party political. He for him to share in his knowledge, and
Thank you, everybody. We'll start the formal proceedings with the evacuation procedure. There is a location plan on the exits and the assembly points situated on the doors of this. Please familiarise yourself with it. On discovering a fire, please carry out the following: sound the alarm, attack the fire if possible and safe to do so using appliances provided. On hearing the evacuate signal, please carry out the following: exit the building by your nearest, safest exit. All visitors to report to Assembly Point G. All staff report to their designated assembly point on Woolpack Way car park, and do not leave the assembly point for any reason until told to do so by the incident controller or fire brigade officer. Thank you. Item 2 on the agenda, apologies.
Parker, Rose.
Noted. Thank you. Noted. Declarations of personal or prejudicial interest. I see none. Thank you. Right, to receive the mayor's announcements. Firstly, I'd just like it to go on record thanking Mr. Maxey and his team for the exceptional work that he has done with the protesters at Kingsbury. I think Mr. Maxey, considering he was on holiday at the time, and over that short period of time achieved an injunction, which I believe is the first in the country. It's certainly an accolade for Mr. Maxey and his team, and I'd like that to be recorded accordingly. And thanks, Steve, for his hard work. There's a couple of things that I've been on. I had the pleasure of going down to Warwick to the High Sheriff's Awards that I nominated PC Lloyd Walton, who's part of the Safer Neighbours team, because he started a boxing club up for some of the youths that were starting to go off the rails. And it has had marked improvement in that field. And I thought it was worthy of an award, and so did the High Sheriff. And so we went down to Warwick for that very pleasing evening. Also went down to Atherstone Football Club a couple of times, and whether you've seen it, they have won a small shield that stands about 4 foot high, which was they won the league, and if they win on Saturday, they have won 30 matches this season, which is, again, is somewhat of a record. And last night, Councillor Major Singh, who's not here unfortunately tonight, through his county councillors fund, has funded a defibrillator for in Atherstone North Ward, which is my ward. That was installed at the Mayor, which is on the outer walls of the Mayor, which actually obviously serves the football club area and the Atherstone North Ward. So I would like to thank Councillor Singh for doing that, say from his county councillors fund. Moving on to item 5, to answer questions from members and the public pursuant to standing order number 7.
No questions.
No questions. Thank you, Mr. Maxey. Right. Item 6, to receive and consider the minutes and notes of the meeting for the Planning and Development Board, 7th of March, the 11th of April.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to beg that we move the Planning and Development Board on the 7th of March and the 11th of April.
P383, P384, P385, 386, P387, P388, P389, and P390.
I'd like to beg that we recommend adopt the meeting of the Planning and Development Board on the 7th of March and the 11th of April.
Okay. All those in favour? Any against? Unanimous, Mr. Maxey. Item 7 on the agenda, to receive and consider the minutes and notes of the meeting for the special subgroup 8th of March and the 12th of April. Pages 391 to 392. Councillor
Mr.
Clue.
Mayor, I beg to receive the minutes.
P391 and P392.
Mr. Mayor, to receive.
Those in favour? Any against? Again, unanimous. Item 8, to receive and consider the minutes of the Community Environment Board on the 14th of March, which is page 393 to 396.
Mr. Mayor, may I move that the minutes of the Community Environment Board of the 14th of March 2022 be received.
Need that second.
Sorry?
Need that second.
Oh,
Second, Mr. Mayor.
seconded by Councillor Wright. Sorry, P393. Yeah. P394. P395. And P396. That's enough.
To be adopted.
Moved and seconded. Those in favour? Any against? And again, unanimous. Thank you. Item 9, to receive and consider the minutes and notes of the meeting of the Resources Board on the 28th of March, pages 397 to 402.
Board meetings, 28th of March, be received.
Second.
P397. P398. Councillor Gosson.
I propose a slight amendment to the minute which is under the minority request, which is item 45, and to suggest that rather than residents who do not have immediate access to on-street or driveway parking having a 2-hour leeway, that those residents that have no choice but to pay the parking charges are given a free exemption from parking charges within our borough. And it's based on the reasons that currently under the cost of living crisis, these people have no choice. So it's become an additional tax to pay the £600, which is required for the yearly ticket, and they have no option to park anywhere else. And it's unfair and penalises those people.
Thank you, Councillor Gosling.
Mr. Mayor, can I just establish, just so we know what we're considering it? So in terms of the amendment, could I suggest that a trial off-street parking scheme for, so that would be a trial free.
Yeah.
Try to have a look at this. On-street parking be given free access to the car parks. Is that?
Yeah.
Is that sufficiently clear?
Yeah, it's the immediate access to on-street or driveway.
Yeah. So let me just. So that's a.
It's the same wording as before, but rather than the 2-hour amendment to allow the free 2 hours, that they are given the free.
Yeah, it's just that 2 hours doesn't appear in the.
It's in section. It's in paragraph 32 of the list.
So parking scheme for free. Street or driveway.
Yeah.
Driveway parking for 12 months. Be agreed.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
So that's been proposed, needs seconding.
Seconded by Councillor Parsons.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to second the motion, reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Do we take that vote now, Mr. Maxwell?
No, you can go into the debate. If Councillor Gosling wants to set out anything further behind that, we can then go into the debate. Councillor Gosling will sum up, and then Councillor Simmons will give the original first.
Any further comments? No?
Yeah, yeah.
Councillor Bell?
Yeah, I mean, I can understand the sentiment behind what what came out of the meeting, because we weren't giving anything extra to things, making life a little bit for people on the free. They didn't have to go up early and get a ticket. That we were going in step needs to be considered, and as far as in terms of churn around the really related, in my view, to what was agreed at resources. I think it's just a massive step.
Any further comments? Councillor Wright?
This is also from what Councillor Van. I should remind that this is no concerned. A number of them are their to so in terms because residents headline and the main it's all, as I say, you of the late fact that we are of to reports is considerable. I look forward to your comments.
Councillor Davies?
Thank you. I wasn't actually going to say anything tonight because I thought that what we were asking for on behalf of these residents was actually quite reasonable, because we're not talking about large numbers of people, but there are residents who live right next to car parks that only have footpath or their normal parking always been near to their house on the other side where the car park is. The actual costs to the would not be very great, but the idea that people have to pay £600 a year or thereabouts if they wish to continue doing that, really, particularly at the moment, I think is unreasonable. And I really don't think it is unreasonable for us to put in a minority report to try and put this case forward, which residents have brought to us. It's not the Labour Party that are causing this. We are representing the residents of this borough exactly the same as you are. So I don't think it is reasonable to say that we are causing a lot of expense for this. I do think it would be reasonable for us as a council to allow these few residents to be able to park their cars near to their homes safely and to keep them safe if they are on shift work, to keep their families safe. We have residents who are elderly, with residents who have disabled children, and we are forcing them to park to distance from their homes unnecessarily so, in my view. And I think that we should allow them to carry on parking in their traditional places free of charge.
Thank you,
That is why
councillor.
we've brought this here.
Thank you, councillor Derricks. Anyone else? One, two.
Oh, just,
I didn't know which one to point to.
okay, so it's just a question. It's the second time that the idea of churn in the town centre has been brought up. Could I ask where the statistics are for that, and we have them presented to us, please? Thank you.
Councillor Parsons.
Thank you, Chair. Having reserved my right to speak, I will speak. I think the amendment that we're proposing is totally reasonable. By the very nature of the thing, those people who do not have driveways or frontage that they can park on tend to be those people who actually live in the most challenging circumstances in our town and in our region, essentially. We are, all of us, aware of the very real cost of living crisis, which is hitting now. We can pretend it isn't happening, but that's putting your head in the sand, and that's ridiculous. It is happening. It is a crisis of the current time, and it is a crisis of the moment, and it's a crisis that families in our locality are having to fight, and it's going to get worse. There is nobody here who doesn't know that it is going to get worse for those families. We are going to see child poverty increasing. We are going to see bigger and bigger problems here. To say that that's not the case is simply not true. What we're asking is that we take a gesture which has been made, and I accept that you've made a gesture in trying to actually look at this problem, and we take it further to where it needs to go. The necessity is for those people who have these problems, who have nowhere to park, to be able to park without incurring a charge of £600 a year or thereabouts, at a time when this country is in crisis, where so many families in this country are in crisis, and to deny that is simply not true. So I would suggest that we do look at the amendment and that we do vote in favour of this amendment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, councillor Parsons.
Can I respond to the direct
Yeah.
questions as well?
Yeah, councillor Parsons.
There we go, lights on.
So, sorry, can I just, sorry, Councillor Gosling speaks last at the
Yeah.
end of
I
the
was-
debate before Councillor Simmons then.
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
So there's no need particularly now to answer the question.
Yeah, no, that's
Sorry,
fine.
I just didn't want to exclude anybody who you've spoken to else.
Absolutely.
Apart from Councillor Simmons couldn't speak. I don't know.
Anyone else wish to speak?
Apologies. That always happens when I try and protect people's right to speak.
Okay.
I'm glad I did it.
The handful of people that have been identified in this scheme is not huge. This would not be an enormous expense. As opposed to the waste of this evening, the Labour group would have been quite happy to wait an extra week and deal with this in May. So the reason we did not call the extraordinary meeting, we did not cause this expense. We would have been more than happy to wait for an extra week and deal with this in a proper course of events. To sum up and to reiterate what Dave has said, many of the families that we've spoken to, many of the people that are dealing with this challenge, this is a genuine challenge, and are frustrated by the fact that they have no choice but to pay a rather large fee for the residents' parking. It's not just about the 2 hours in the morning. It's not just about the inconvenience. It is imposing difficulties on some of our families, on a handful of our families, and it could be alleviated very simply and very efficiently. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Simmons, you wish to respond?
Yes.
There's a direct questions that had come in. Didn't have to get when they return.
free overnight parking. We can't. So, and a costing would be required because we don't know the. Cost North Warwickshire. Cost avoidance situation to reduce our. So I think to the that there was a result. I think it actually answers the the question that was asked of us wasn't that. But far because it's reviewed as part of the task and finish group frequently and the car parking charges are being implemented and the effects of those over the what we're seeing is that people when they're going out to work £600. Yeah, I don't think it applies across the board quite so like.
Councillor Gosling, would you like to reiterate the amendment that you are?
Or I can, if that assists.
Yeah, you adapted what I'd
Thank you. Just make sure the minutes reflect what you want them to reflect. So A, in effect, is replaced with the following: that a trial off-street parking scheme for free access to council car. Accurate.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Gosling?
yes.
Yes. Do we have a seconder?
That was Councillor Parsons.
Councillor Parsons is second. So, oh, just
Yes,
about
Councillor
that.
Ormond.
All those in favour of Councillor Gosling's proposal?
6, 7, 8, 9.
All those against?
2, 3.
That amendment is lost.
Continue through the page.
Thank you. We got to page P398. We now go to P399. P400. Councillor Mawson.
It's item 41. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to propose an amendment to item 48, the leisure facilities, local authority trading company. It's the same as what's printed in the minutes here. Do you want me to read it out?
You're proposing an amendment.
The executive board clarified the government's arrangements to oversee the leadership, management, transition of our in-house leisure services, local trading authority company. And B, the executive board considers to establish a shadow board in order to ensure an integrated approach to managing this change.
Do you have a seconder?
Mayor, I'd like to second and reserve my right to speak.
Councillor Chambers. Yeah. Debate.
Well, council wants to introduce the
I will,
proposal.
yeah, precisely.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Okay.
I can't stand up at the moment. To be all right.
No, you're
Yeah.
fine.
I think we all need that in this day and age that times are tight for money, etc., and we need to use our taxpayers' money well. And I couldn't completely understand it with the Labour group. We would agree that, but is this the best way to handle over millions of pounds of taxpayers' money to a private company? Is spending the 60k on the consultancy necessary when we can use up the services of the LGA, the LGIU and ASPI, which as we pay them, we can access their service and expertise for free? Well, I'm completely shocked. The opposition leader accused the Labour group at the last budget meeting of wasting money, even though it was their own government starved us of it in the first place. Saying out of the frying pan into the fire, we're giving away with only one proposal on the table. So how could how could this be our best option when no other proposals are considered? Is this option value for money? It seems that we cannot see no further than our noses. And how do we monitor this transfer apparently by 3 separate committees is keeping an eye on it with 3 separate occasions, which leads to time consuming, not joined up, impractical and lengthy, to name a few. One simple solution is to have one subcommittee dedicated to one goal, retaining the good letter services and ensuring we get good value for money. The health of our children and adults depend on our leisure services, and we should take this seriously.
Any further comments? Hancock?
Thank you. On the point, there's a couple of points we're saying about taxpayers' money. I actually watched the live meeting on this to be decided, and I thought Councillor Bowles was brilliant. She explained it fully. The governance is by us. We set the targets. We are in control of their ethos. It's not taking leisure services away. We've already said that. We even said in the meeting, I believe, of how good our leisure services are. There are new venues being built in the area. They need to be able to be flexible. And I also, on the taxpayers' money, I put it to £152,000 that will save the council. So I agree with these tough times at the moment, we should be saving money for our residents and our council, not holding on to it.
Councillor Gosling?
Thank you. What we're asking for is more scrutiny of the decisions. What we're asking for is a fully appraised model which represents the different options that were put on the table. And what we're asking for is to have a subcommittee that can actually oversee this transition, which is immensely important to the lives of everybody. And it's a huge, huge decision to move our leisure services. We also understand that in recent times under COVID, that many other arm's length companies have fallen into difficulty and have had to go back to either being fully council owned or council run. And the model may not be the best. What we're asking for is more information, and we're asking for a full appraisal of the different models which are available to us. And we're asking for a subcommittee to oversee this. That's it.
Councillor Gosling? Councillor Chambers?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, what's in front of us is a recommendation to spend £60,000 from the new initiative reserves. Our amendment is really expressing a concern about the way in which we've arrived at this figure and the decision to spend this money, and calling for more improved and better and tighter governance arrangements over what is going to be a significant organisational change, where we're going to create an arm's length company, albeit working to our specification. We will wholly own it, but we will have to TUPE staff, we will have to bring in legal advice, and we will have to govern the money that we apparently are going to allocate £60,000 to. There's been no debate about what else that money might have been used for. I understand that officers thought it was a good idea. It never came to C&E board. And I think that strengthens our view that the governance of this money and the decision making around this, there needs to be a clear focus, clear leadership and clear tightness in the way in which decisions are made and the way in which the process is governed and managed from here on. I have to say, if you read the reports that went to C&E board, it talks about these are not necessarily the limit of areas in which external support would be helpful. Well, you know, what is that limit? If you read some of the advice that comes from Sport England, we're looking at setup costs of between 150 and 200,000 pounds. And yet when we debated it at C&E board, we were told that most of this effort and most of the resource would come from in-house staff and time that our staff would be spending. We have no idea how this process is going to be managed from here on. We've no idea how this 60k is to be spent. What we do know is that we have to produce a very sound business model. We have to put work into looking at options in terms of income, the flexibility of which there is very little to compete in other markets because there is no competition under this model. And we have to look at all the transitional costs of setting up essentially a separate organisation as a trading company. Now, I don't know what experience we got in this borough council of doing such a thing. I understand that, you know, with the outsourcing of the collection of waste, which has been done with other borough councils, a huge amount of effort has gone into that. But actually, what we've got in front of us is a kind of finger in the air. Well, let's have a wheeze of saving 150 odd K, but there's nothing more behind it, and that's why having a very clear arrangement, rather than having it go to 3 different boards, splitting and fragmenting the responsibility so that one board gets one perspective, another board gets another. We are proposing that from here on, the governance of this should be very carefully led and should be a proper shadow board overseeing it. So it's an integrated approach from here in. I think that's a very reasonable organisational proposal. But I do, as we say, have worries about this 60k and an open-ended budget potentially going into rising costs to establish what essentially there's been no justification in terms of the need, the outcome or the benefits for local people.
Thank you, Councillor Chambers. Anyone else? Sorry, Councillor Bell.
Thank you. Seriously, Councillor Wilson's comment, but we are taking very seriously what it's all about. And now's the time. Over the last few we are not looking that we're putting forward. That they're not. Looking at different types of trading, their job. Now, and that had private sector did find it it is not a problem. A finger in the wind. She has been quite technical. Now, I'm sorry, you were saying the aspects of setting this up. Now, in this committees, all these stages will go through committees, which gives all involved. And obviously, this is an investigation for every savings. Understand what about this, and I think we will get it right. I'm confident. There's more pounds than this, so you know we can do this.
Councillor Bell said most of what I was going to say. Within the so in it. Said will without the need. Bell said Earth, which was there was football, but so most importantly. Of North Warwick.
Any further comments? Yes, Councillor Norton, thank you.
Yeah, very interesting, very interesting. All I can say is, please think smart. Certainly. All I can say is, please think smart. Look again on how we wish to run our leisure services in the future and support our amendment, because if it goes wrong, it will be harder to fix.
Councillor Timmins.
I think Councillor would essentially be old ground. We've spoken about it at resources and again this evening. But just to respond to Councillor Mawson on that, summing up, we do want to have really effective and successful leisure services and support them so that they can be agile and flexible and deliver for residents. We want to deliver a great programme. We want to be able to deliver great leisure services beyond you know, 2022, you can see from our budget, we've trust done as part of our bid for levelling up. You know, that's not a
Yours amendments.
Would you like to just reiterate the amendment?
It's
That's
A
right.
and B at the bottom of page
400. Okay, thank you. Right, put Councillor Mawson's amendment to the vote. All in favour of Councillor Mawson's?
1, 2, 3, 4.
All those against?
1, 2, 3.
The amendment falls. Thank you. Going back to the minutes. P401 and finally P402.
I move that the minutes of the be adopted.
Moved by Councillor Simmons, seconded by Councillor Wright. All those in favour? All those against?
9.
Thank you. Yes. Item 10 on the minutes to authorise the Chief Executive in accordance with Article 11.05 of the Articles of the Constitution to sign and seal on behalf of the Council any orders, deeds, documents necessary to give effect to any resolution of the Council, including any passed during part of the meeting which is held in private.
Second.
First and seconded. All those in favour? Any against? It's unanimous. Thank you. Item 11. Oh, sorry. No.
Okay, carry on.
Right. Item 11. The exclusion of the public and press. To consider whether in accordance with section 100A brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public and press be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined by Schedule 12A to the Act. First from the chair, seconded by.
Second.
Right, all those in favour? Any to the contrary? Thank you.